Well, good
Hello,
morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, good morning, everyone. I'm Michelle Oliver. I am the founder and CEO of Expitality and your host for Talkabout TV. And today I am absolutely delighted to bring you John Griffiths. I should be reading this because I just skipped something. But Talkabout TV, in case you don't know us, we talk about all things experiential outdoor hospitality with an emphasis on experiential, on outdoor, and on hospitality. All three of those, because those are the things that really change people's lives and we believe change the world. So today I am delighted to welcome John Griffiths, and John is the founder of Outbound Kitchen, a unique company that pairs his creative culinary skill with his 20 years in F&B. You've been involved with concept development and multi-unit operations, and now John is bringing his expertise to experiential outdoor hospitality, which is very lucky for us because this changes everything in this space. So welcome, John. Thank you for being
Thanks.
here with me today. Today is kind of an experiential outdoor interview on this
I
side.
know I didn't get the memo. I need to get outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't stand being inside. So anyway, thank you so much for being here. And we're really going to focus today for anyone who's watching this on the value of experiences, right? And I thought I would just kind of toss it to you and let you speak a little bit to the idea of the value of F&B as an experience rather than like a ice chest full of foil wrapped breakfast burritos.
Well, that
Sorry.
is truly an experience also.
Yes, it is. It
Of its
is.
own
Yeah.
side. Well,
Yeah.
I think that when I think about how F&B really impacts opportunities in outdoor and experiential hospitality, the first thing I think of isn't even financial. It's about the interaction with the customer, right? And when you have a food and beverage program, in your operation, you immediately increase the touch points that you have with your guests exponentially. You're going to have people that are going to be interacting with your customers, on the hourly, in these facilities. And, these people are trained in, hospitality. They're trained not just in like, how to provide them, towels and so forth, but to anticipate their needs, to interact with them, to create an experience that is, measurable, and authentic. And I think that's really what people look for when they come to outdoor and experiential, destinations, is that authenticity. There's hotel resorts every part of the world, but people come to these, experiential opportunities because they want something that's a little more intimate, authentic, and not part of that normal, hospitality or hotel type atmosphere. And I think that, developing an authentic food and beverage program really can benefit that a lot.
Yeah. So let's just talk kind of organically about this. And I'm not meaning to gloss over all of John's history here, but you've been all over the space. And you guys, anybody who's interested, you can go to his LinkedIn profile. You can search and find interviews with him because he's kind of a hot commodity right now because of your understanding of the space and bringing it to us. What have you seen? I'm kind of going off our timeline or our agenda already, but because this is what's coming to my mind. What have you seen when you came into this outdoor hospitality space? What's the biggest gap that you think is missing that you're filling?
Well, I think it's that connection to, providing people more than just a service when it comes to food and beverage, right? I think that a lot of operators in the space tend to think of food and beverage as just like, let's fill the fridge with things people might need. Let's give them, the bare minimum of what they could expect. And I think that there's so much more to be achieved and so much more value to derive from food and beverage and just, giving people, hamburgers and hot dogs in the refrigerator or ketchup and mustard on the shelves. There's so much
Mhm.
more that you can provide for them. And we see that right now, like food tourism is coming to outdoor hospitality right now. I mean,
Yeah.
the KOA survey I read this year says 36% of people are seeking food tourism as part of their experience. And that was the number 2 trend overall, and these are
Yeah.
campers. These aren't just clampers. These are people that are coming from all walks and all levels of the market to experience the outdoor destinations. And they want
Mhm.
good food when they're there. So,
Right.
we see also that like, people are willing to spend more and travel more. That same survey showed that people are willing to spend $300 more per trip on average, and they're willing to travel 140 miles more to find a destination that has quality food and beverage within it. So, like, people are looking for these things, and it's time to meet the guests where they're at.
I love that. It's so true. We are educated, we are savvy, there's money to spend. And even when there's not, food is a priority. Like if you're on a budget or whatever, people have their own special diets, and we know what we like, we know what we want, and we're used to having it, right? So let's
Absolutely.
talk about some of those touch points. I know that I recently was at, it was a huge like convention resort place in Florida. And the first thing that I wanted when I walked into that hotel wasn't there. So I was like, I'd been traveling. I came on I guess I got an Uber, and that was an ordeal. You're coming in from whatever your travel experience is. And I was just thinking Pellegrino or like sparkling something with lime. So what are that would have been a number 1 touch point where they could have made a difference in my world, right? But instead I had to walk across this great big giant lobby and wait at the desk until someone showed up. And it was a really nice hotel. I mean, it was a resort. So talk to me a little bit about how you address touch points in outdoor hospitality. What do you see as like the first opportunity?
Well, I mean, the first opportunity could be as simple as, like you said, like having some of things in the accommodation for guests, right? People are coming in, they don't know exactly what to expect. So from that first
Right.
moment, if you're trying to, make an impression on your guests and they show up in the tent or the cabin or whatever accommodation type you have, and there's a little food and beverage sitting there for them that's complimentary, that's an incredible, expression of welcome. Like, you don't know how long or how far they've been traveling, but most of the times these destinations require more than just getting out of the airport and catching a transfer. Like, you have to make an effort to
Right.
get there, and sometimes you might not have time to stop to load up your cooler or whatever it might be. So being able to have something like that is just really great. But I'm going to tell you one story. This one,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna, like, this is not my little stick here, but I had a conversation with a client recently, and we were talking about, just the elevation of experience that this gives, that food and beverage can really have on guests. And he broke it
Mhm.
down really simply. And he said, the hours of the day when people are dining, right? Let's just say dinner, right? At the end of the day, like, people come to these spots a lot of times because there's destinations they want to see nearby, a national park, lots of wilderness. They want to be active. But the hours you pay for, right, as someone who visits a glamping destination, a customer, right, you're paying for those hours between, like, 5 and 8 p.m. when the sun's starting to set. You've got, whether you're nestled in one of those like sandstone canyons in Utah or,
Yeah.
atop a hill in Texas Hill Country, like, those are the hours you pay for. Why do you want to get back in your car and drive out and try and find food? Or why do you want to try, and as an operator, why do you want guests to leave during that period of time? That's when the memories are made, right? Those are the hours that people pay the premium for. So providing food and beverage, it doesn't have to be a restaurant, but having opportunities for people to stay on property, to purchase on property, and to give them a quality experience, whether that's retail combined with, some outdoor cooking facilities, or maybe it is some type of quick, fast, or full service, restaurant type operations. You want to create that connection with your guests. You want them to sit down, reflect on the day on your property, right? You want them to build that interaction,
Exactly. Yes. I love that. And that's what you're calling the golden hour.
Yeah, I mean
Is that what
that's
you're,
it,
yeah,
right?
I
That's
love
the
that.
golden hour,
I
right?
love
Those are
that.
the hours you
It
pay for
is.
when you go. Like I think about it, like I
Yeah.
wake up early in the morning, and sure, sunrises are fantastic too, right? Why would you want to have to
Yeah.
wake up first thing in the morning and go, oh, I'm hungry, let's get out of here, we got to go get food? No, you want to wake up,
Right.
have a cup of coffee or tea, grab something really light to eat maybe before you go out and be active. Like the bare minimum to me is just bridging those kind of buffers, morning services and evening services, right? That really can impact the guest experience. They're mostly going to all be out during the day, at most of these destinations,
Right.
but giving them options early in the morning, as simple as coffee and tea, and maybe local pastries that are baked, and brought on site, and then something in the evening, whether that's again like retail options that are out there, or all the way to full service. It just really has an exponential impact, not just on the bottom line, right? There's plenty of data out there that shows that if you provide food and beverage services, your ADR ceiling can lift significantly.
Right.
People will travel for it.
Absolutely. I love this. And I know a lot of people are aware of this because of all the resources and education that are out there, but so few people really take into account the power of story. And in my mind, like I work with clients a lot on this, like the story, the brand, the story brand and all of that. And when I think about food, that's where what we're really doing is inviting these people in to kind of be the hero of their own story, right? So they get to come and they get to have their adventures and then they come back. And I love what you're saying about it's kind of like the memories and the emotional tie that they have to the property. And that's where the stories will also come from. So you don't want it just to be that they hiked the Grand Canyon or whatever, but that they did come back and then they have those intimate, emotional, it's connection, right? That's what drives all of us. Like, so what was that adventure like? And we know that food is the way, it's like, I don't know, it's going to sound so corny, but you're the corny culinary chef, so food is a story. It's the way to the connection of the body and the heart and the soul, and then it can carry the story of your brand, right? And it's always educating, like when you said local croissants or whatever, that's a whole different experience than, oh, there's a, I don't know what they call it, like a breakfast bar or something with 1,200 things. No, you get a really exquisite croissant that has a story behind it, right? So
Absolutely.
powerful,
Yeah.
emotional.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's what people want. They want an authentic experience. They're coming to whatever corner of the globe this is to experience what life is like there, what the interaction with the natural environment and the people are. So they want to
Yeah.
eat the food that's produced there. They want to experience that, like that is a
Yeah.
real thing, having a locally sourced menu. It doesn't have to be big. I mean, this isn't the kind of
Yeah.
podcast where I feel like we're like stating numbers, but I mean, I got a ton of them back here, but
I
you can,
love how good you are at that, John. All your stats. Go ahead, share them.
well,
I think
people,
it's
we
great.
found that people are, guests are really happy with menus that are over 40% smaller than they might normally dine in. So you don't need a lot of
Yes,
options. You just need a few quality options for people, local
exactly.
options, connect them to where they are, to your story. Like there's nothing that tells a better story than a server explaining like, oh, well, our little beet salad here, these beets come from a farm, down the road, and we've got a local creamery that makes the goat cheese, about 100 miles away. And this is just really fantastic. We're happy to share it with you right now. I mean, that just, it's
It's
fantastic, right? And
everything.
if you find a local beekeeper, you sell some local honey, like, like you can, there's
Yeah.
so many little things that you can do that are, they're commonplace in restaurant world right now, in all walks, in all areas,
Yeah.
and from an operational point, we've really exploded in the last few years because a lot of chefs and hospitality business owners have moved out of big cities since the pandemic, and they're in these smaller towns, in the St. George's, in the like the Aspens and the Rifles and all these other small towns, building these small businesses. So there's even more
Yeah.
opportunity to build these connections now than there was 5 or 10 years ago.
Yes. People are seeking meaning
Mhm.
right? And they want to feel something. So everything you said addresses that, like what does this mean? And when you can provide meaning and emotion and an experience that expands someone, and you can do that with a meal, and it's delightful. So I love that. Okay, so talk
That
to me. I'm
I'm
going to
gonna
jump
summarize you
to a
one thing, because that's
okay.
not
Yeah,
before you
yeah.
jump, because that's what we use exactly your last phrase where you said like it adds, right?
Oh,
We use the phrase additive, right? And have you ever been on a vacation where you go somewhere and you say, oh, it was really amazing, like the views were fantastic, we saw these great things, and the food was okay. Like that's subtractive, right? In your mind, you're like,
terrible.
okay, well, it was
Yeah.
good, but it was still good enough because the food removed from that experience, right? So we want our food and beverage to be
Uh,
additive. It doesn't have to be exceptional. It doesn't necessarily have to be the reason people travel there, but it needs to be additive. It needs to be something like, we went there. Oh my gosh, it was our first time to, Yellowstone, and it was magnificent. And the place we stayed at, the tents were beautiful and so well appointed. Oh, and they had these amazing croissants in the morning. Like that's it.
yeah.
That could be enough
Oh, I love that.
because it's additive to the
Exactly.
experience, right?
Right.
So
And it
that's what we look
is
for.
to your, I love that. And it
Yeah.
also to your earlier point where hospitality is anticipating
Yeah.
what that guest secretly desires before they ever even know it, right? And every time you can provide a little moment that's like you were saying, oh, and yeah. And by the way, the breakfast, and there was some like it was freshly squeezed orange juice. Like that's the difference, right? It's
Yeah. What
so simple.
exactly?
It's so
Yeah.
tiny and so everything. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. So let's talk about providing premium outdoor cooking solutions, because some of these people, depending on the resort, they come back and they might have been, I don't know, fishing or hunting or there's all kinds of variations on the theme of what experiential means. So if they want to cook at their site, some people do, some people don't, but they like the idea of maybe being cooked for. I don't know. Talk to me about that, the
Yeah.
options.
So obviously I'm a restaurant person, so we love to kind of talk
Yeah.
about that full service experience, but there are a lot of opportunities in outdoor hospitality where you can meet your guests where they're at. Like you said, they're
Yeah.
active, they're a little more self-sufficient, and you want to provide an experience where they're involved in that. And we've done some projects over the years where we bring in chefs to lead kind of experiential dinners where they lead the guests in cooking their own meal over live fire or a grill or whatever,
Yeah.
and the guest is part of that experience. It's communal. And that process has led us into like, well, how do we ensure that we get good quality cooking equipment to these locations? Because that's really important,
Yeah.
like it's great to have, open fire cooking for people, but you have to wait 30 minutes to like get the wood ready, till you have coals to
Right.
cook on. You got to know how to maintain it. And I'm a chef and been one for many years. And that is a task in itself, right? So we partnered a while back with Isla, which is an outdoor kitchen company. And most of this stuff to date, it's pretty much like you go to Home Depot if you're a developer and you pick out some cheap little
Yeah.
grill and you
Right.
put it in your properties, or you have to go this route through a 3-tier retail system here in the US where you spend 20 grand a piece for some really premium grills. And we found
Hmm.
this partnership with Isla, and they jumped on board when we started explaining what outdoor hospitality is, what we're trying to do with food and beverage, because nobody's going at it from the professional kind of wholesale mindset that we are, where we're going to put these
Yeah.
into resorts, partner with resort operators to do this. And these things are just fantastic. They're all like, aluminum, marine grade aluminum. They don't rust. The grills are, for a professional chef, these things are fantastic. And what this does is it provides an opportunity, whether you're going to build something like communal in the center of your property where guests can kind of utilize it when they need to themselves. But these things have like really great quality, stovetop burners on them. They have obviously the grills that are gas fired. They all run on propane. They're just, they last forever. They look
Mm.
beautiful. And people can come in a couple of clicks and they start cooking, right? So you give them options, like maybe you just stock your lodge or your retail spot with just good quality local foods, a few steaks, some chicken, things like that, where people can kind of come in and shop. And then you give them this tool, right? And then if you want to do
Yeah.
some dinners once a week or a couple times a month, you can hire a local chef and they come in and they can use that stuff and do magic with it, right? Because they know, they can come in with from their prepped site and they come in and deliver a really exceptional experience for your guests. They can make a reservation. You can book this stuff in advance. I mean, the ones we do, they all book in advance. And we try to get them to book when they reserve the actual site so that your partner in this has kind of the funds in place and they've got the commitment. But this just provides an
Yeah.
exceptional experience. People interact with each other. That's the other thing we were talking about earlier, that when people are dining together, right, in these settings, they're compact, right? They're next to each other.
Right.
And they're all talking about the day, right? And that was one of the best things I've
Right.
always liked about some of these experiences. You're like, oh, hey, where did you do today? Oh, we went here. We went on
Right.
this hike. Oh, we found this little like really beautiful waterfall. If you go out, when you go out tomorrow, they share these experiences. Again, this is additive, right? It amplifies the experience that the guests are having. So whether you put these grills at the tent sites, or the cabin sites, or you put them in a larger communal setting, you're going to create an opportunity for them to, again, stay on your property during those peak hours. Let them be there during sunset. Experience what as an operator, right? You spent all this time researching this location, or you've loved it for many years. Let them see the same thing, right? You don't want them to just wake up, hop in the car, go get breakfast, do their thing, and come back after the sunset just to jump back in the tent, right? Like, you want them to spend some time there. So give them the reason to do that.
Oh, that's wonderful, John. I really appreciate how deeply you understand the guest journey and how you're so passionate about it, as you should be. And it really is so important. These are the areas that people tend to neglect. Like, you can think of it as, oh no, because there are a lot of moving pieces and parts when you're building a property and a business like this. And oftentimes, I guess I want this to be a positive statement, but it just costs a lot of money, so people can start cutting corners. But where you would be tempted to cut a corner is the exact area where you should expand and invest, because those are the areas that are going to make you stand out, and they will bring back to you revenue. So when you're speaking of this, it's just wonderful. Hardly anybody does that, to have an elevated grill and that you can brand or color or whatever the thing is. And then all of the variety of experiences that you just shared, it becomes a vehicle for that community. Again, for those moments that they will never forget, because that's where I met this person. And it could be, I don't want to say they kill it, you cook it, but that's what keeps coming to my mind. In those situations where they went out fishing or whatever, but you actually do it for them. People, they want to, it's like the whole term glamping, right? You want to have the adventure, but you don't want to suffer. So nobody wants to wait for 20 minutes and hope the coals all are evenly glowing.
Absolutely.
Or maybe they do.
Yeah.
That's
Maybe
not
they
my
do,
idea. So, yeah.
I mean,
I
but
don't
you
know.
can, like, that's the entry point, right? And then from there,
Right.
you can really grow with it. And I think that's one thing that people need to understand is, like, you don't have to jump in and do the big thing right away, but if you are there and you want to explore it, like, that's the first thing. I mean, you're going to have those things are going to look fantastic. And when you put those up on your website, like showing your accommodation with something like that right up front, you're sending a very clear message to your prospective customers.
Yes.
Like, we've anticipated what you need. You don't want to cook on a charcoal grill. We get it. You probably don't even cook on a charcoal grill when you're at home. Why do you want to do it when you're on vacation and you're way more active? You don't have the day to plan. Like, just come in. Like, we've got these things taken care of. Like, that's what you're trying to express through F&B, is that you're anticipating their needs.
Exactly. And isn't it funny how we really do, the human brain just remembers the bad. Like, I was thinking about a great meal I had and I really needed salt. There was like no salt and pepper on the table. That was such, like, I remember, I don't know, that just came to my mind. People will remember these really strange things and not the highlights. So every opportunity you have to differentiate yourself, and this is one of them. Okay, we have so much to talk about. So developing scalable partial or full service F&B programs. We started to touch on that a bit. Do you want to share a little bit about like how you work with that, different ways that you could actually come onto into a business and help? Partial,
Yeah,
full.
sure.
There's so many variations on that theme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, part of it is just what we were kind of alluding to with, developing some kind of retail presence is, maybe you don't want to invest in building a full service kitchen, there's certainly, costs with that. We totally understand it. But what we think is really important is to explore food and beverage opportunities early on. It's like when if you have the opportunity, there's people out there listening to this that are thinking about developing, a resort, do it in pre-development. Explore the potential in the community, understand what the outlay is going to be, that way you can set up the services that you might need on the property early on. You can run those things through the ground. You can make sure that you have the electricity you would need, et cetera, right? So that should you grow into that, right, it's already there, and the outlay is very minimal when you figure that, and then when you do determine food and beverage, there's so many ways you can go. The food and beverage, like retail elements, are super successful in smaller operations where you have, self-sufficient people. But if you build even the most basic, kitchen setup, and it could be in a lot of destinations, it could be like what we talked about, an outdoor kitchen with like a pergola over it that maybe only runs, 6 or 7 months of the year when you have fair weather, that can be utilized by a third party operator, like a partner, a local chef or caterer, to come in and do dinners, and it could be as often as every weekend. We have some that run, 4 or 5 days a week during high season where, there's an organized dinner every night. And those are really, really successful. And then you can scale from there. Once you get the basic structure, you don't have to buy $100,000 in equipment right up front. You can kind of phase in and say, okay, we're going to set this up for what we consider in the business a finishing kitchen. And that allows a caterer to come in and know that they've got a licensed facility, right? That they can kind of come into. They can wash their dishes when they show up. They can, heat their food or keep it warm, and they've got tables to work on, and then they can do something really special. And that gets into one thing that I also don't think people talk enough about in these resorts is the benefit of food and beverage when you're booking large events. It is essential. There's so much money to be had in the corporate retreat world right now. Like since the work from home thing has taken off, like companies are shedding their leases significantly and trying to find better ways for their employees to interact. And these retreats are incredible. My wife's employer did this 2 years ago. And now all the money they saved from their lease here in San Francisco, they now spend on twice a year retreats for their employees. And they go to some places like this and they rent the whole thing out for a few days, and this is an exceptional opportunity for operators to really get great revenue. And food and beverage, there is, if you talk to anybody in the regular hospitality world, hotels, banquet revenue it's just so easy. It's a very good opportunity to, provide a baseline for your resort in the early years. You can book in advance, the revenue's there, deposits, it really helps with cash flow. So we just think that there's so many things. We're never going to cover it all in this podcast.
I know.
It's just, there's just a lot of opportunity out there. And you don't have to think, oh, I've got to build a restaurant, it's going to cost me $1 million. Like this isn't that, like there's a lot of solutions out there with, food truck kitchens and these trailers and some of these, container ship kitchen companies that are out there. And we also designed we got some designs for modular kitchens that we're doing also, which, just kind of can join any type of tent or cabin structure that you might have. There's just so much out there to explore.
Yeah, this is really, I know we can't talk about all of it, but I do want to just shine a light on this aspect of what you bring to the table, because when we might come to you with a client that I've done a lot of work with them on their vision and their guest journey and their story and their brand and all of this. And you are so sensitive to that, right? And the budget. I had a restaurant, and I know that I had no idea, like I would have completely failed if it weren't for the guy I happened to meet by divine providence that had opened 6 restaurants, because the first thing you think is, this is totally overwhelming. And we don't tend to think of all these variations that you're presenting. So John, you come, and anybody that's listening, it doesn't matter what level you are on your property, he can understand your vision and your brand and carry it from there and say, okay, based on your budget and your property and your brand, these are different options that would add, not only additional revenue, but an incredible experience in simple ways. So it's not like you have to think all or nothing. And you're so creative with that. When I was listening to you share some things in, I don't know, one of our meetings, I was just, it's incredible how sensitive you are to the client. So I just want to shine a light on that. Yeah. So don't be afraid of F&B, because people get afraid and then they do them the least instead of taking a step. Take a step in wherever you are, and then you can always grow from there. Is that a safe way to say it?
Absolutely. Iterate, just start small and iterate, like that's one thing I think people a lot of times.
Now you froze a second. I don't know if that's me or you.
Okay.
Will you say that again? Yeah, you're back.
Yeah, iterate. That's the phrase. Like that's what we use a lot is you need to iterate, right? Don't just come in with the first idea, from the restaurant world. There's this old saying like Mike Tyson had, he said, everybody has a plan until you step in the ring and get punched in the face, right? That's what it used to be like opening restaurants. You could spend years developing the perfect restaurant for this location. You open the doors, and we used to always say, throw out your business plan on the way back, because at that point, the customers will tell you what they want. And so we always try to move in a very, the simplest way is always the best, right? So find connections that are locally, find what's attractive to people in the community. That's one of the things that drove us into this market, was just the authenticity that it allows for, right? We can do something super unique every single time. We don't have to cookie cutter it. We don't work off of these templates. We have data, we have all these things, but we just love the experience that it's just so fulfilling to connect an operator with, a local bakery or local chefs or food truck companies, or developing the stuff and managing alongside them. That's one of our greatest pleasures, is just connecting on these things. It's so much fun. So much fun.
Yeah, and if you're at a place in your business where I know some people can get, because it can be overwhelming and you get to a point and you're like, why am I doing this again? This can be that injection that just reconnects you to why you're doing this. And it's about supporting local businesses too. Like there's just so much joy in every aspect of this. I was going to ask you something. I forget what you just said, because anyway, let's go on to this. So, the question was why people might hesitate. Well, because it could be overwhelming. But I did want to ask you, because you shared at one point a formula for how to determine when to add I don't know, you tell me, like a more of a full-blown operation. Can you chat a little bit about that? Because I think it's important.
Sure. Well, we have what we call the Goldilocks zone. And so that's like a couple things. Geographically, it's usually when you're between 30 and 100 miles of a population center. Now, that doesn't have to be like a huge city. It could be like the largest close town. Like if we're talking about Zion, we would use like St. George. And this is just top of mind. We use St. George as that reference, right? It's a pretty good town. So we would see that you have the best opportunity for success when you're within 30 to 100 miles. That means that you're going to be far enough away from the options that it's more convenient for guests to stay with your property than to drive out and find more options, right? But you're also close enough that you're going to be able to receive the food product that you need, the supply frequency that's required. And then the most important thing is the staff that you're going to need, right? You need to be in proximity of a decent amount of population to staff your operations. And then we like to see an ADR floor of about $150 to $200. Anything above that, you're in really good shape. That means people are tending to spend a certain amount, and they expect to spend a certain amount of food and beverage in addition to that when they budget, right? So if you follow general hospitality norms and hotels and so forth,
Mm-hmm.
you can almost bank on 20 to 40% of additional revenue based on your ADR for a full service food and beverage
Yeah.
outlet, right? If you do it well. And then key count, you need to have a minimum of 20 keys on property. That's anything above that, we start to see options. Now, that doesn't mean like you go full bore restaurant, although we have clients who have
Mm-hmm.
full scale restaurant with 13 keys, you know, but it's a premium location and they allow people to come in from off property. So there's a lot of ways that you can, you know, slice it up. But generally, if you follow those, if you're within those kind of parameters, then we think you're a prime candidate for some type of elevated food and beverage. So that means it could be, you know, retail. It could be, you know, stocking a lot of really great products, working with a caterer that might drop off, you know, really high quality lunch, you know, picnic lunch options for guests. Or you might want to offer like really high quality grocery items for people to kind of cook on site, doing warm
Mm-hmm.
breakfast. It could be anything simple like that. You know, you might start with just like a coffee bar and retail and have a caterer drop off some, you know, we call grab and go foods, you know, every couple of days, all the way to having a full service restaurant on site. Anything within those parameters usually is where we're starting from.
Okay. So here's a question for you. Let's say, because this is happening a lot in the space right now. Let's say I own like an RV resort and I want to get on the bandwagon of adding cottages and glamping sites. And I'm expanding. I have the room to expand, and I want to get out of that mindset that I'm only an RV resort. So I'm interested in F&B, but I'm seasonal, and there's all these things to consider, right? So the biggest thing that would pop up in my head is, how am I going to staff this? Like, I can come to you and you can set everything up and on the scale that's appropriate for me, and we can work through the branding and all of that. But how am I going to staff that? Would it be internal staff? Is that something you can help with? Can you run the operation? Like, what are my options around that?
Sure. And that's, you know, like when we look at a property, one of the biggest things we look for, as I mentioned, was staff, right? You got to be in proximity to have
Mm-hmm.
a market available to staff your restaurant. We are
Yeah,
growing into management roles now in partnership with operators that we consult with. And that's one of the advantages that we saw. And we're trying to solve a problem that we noticed, you know, kind of early on. Like, we come in, we'd have this great program, we'd spend a lot of time setting it up, but then there was just, you know, the normal turnover would cause a lot of hiccups in the systems, and we were noticing
yeah,
that they weren't performing well over time. And we want to always find options to support our customers, to make sure they're putting their best foot forward every day. So we now offer management services. We don't hire employees ourselves, so we don't have employees on site, but we will manage that F and
sure.
B, the recruitment, the retention, and the training. Right. That's really important. I think that's what, you know, helps set us apart, is that we have such a dynamic team that has so much experience in developing elevated, you know, hospitality services, that we can train really good people. And we think that if you treat people well, you provide them great, you know, great benefits themselves. You know, my old employer, the CEO of our Restoration Hardware, he had a great saying. He said, if I expect my customers to deliver first class service to my customers, or if I expect my employees to deliver first class service to my customers, I must first deliver first class service to my employees. You know, like, you have to take
Yes.
care of your employees. So, you know, recognizing the value that the employees have in your food and beverage program, like we said early on, the number of touch points they're going to have with your guests, these are really high value employees, and you have to look at them as such. Don't think about it as like, we need to provide a minimum wage and a basic, you know, environment for them to work in. Look at them and try to find people that you think are going to have an outsized impact on your guests, right? Like, you want people that are going to be interactive, connect, love where they are and what they're doing. You know, that's so much more important in hiring, is the disposition of your employees rather than the skill set. We can teach them how to flip a burger, right? We can teach them how to make an espresso, but we can't teach people how to be genuine, sincere, love what they're doing, and be compassionate to the people that they're working with and towards. So we think those are really important things when you talk about staffing.
Yeah, this is where my heart is. This is a whole nother conversation that we should
Yeah.
have one day. And I think I mean, overall in hospitality, I think we tend to attract those types of people. But it's like love covereth, what is it in the Bible? Something like love covereth a multitude of sins. It's true. And when you have the right people that, like in my restaurant, when I had like a dinner theater, and I would hope that something would go wrong, because those opportunities are what allow your staff to shine. And I have had every business I've had, I don't know, it's the staff. And it is because I treat them as if they were a guest. And they have no, it's like you're training them with every interaction you have, how they are going to interact with others. It's just a trickle down effect. So the fact that you even brought that up is just says so much about who you are, John, and I absolutely love it. And so imagine this person out there who's either developing, building, expanding, or you just are considering getting into this space. When you have someone managing an asset like your F&B who understands how to manage your people according to your brand, but with the right hospitality kind of, I know Randy, my business partner, always calls it the care gene. It's having that as who you are and just how you interact. Like you are solving a lot of problems for people, because you could come in, like you said, and have the right food and the right experiences, and then the person who delivers it, it just sneers at you. All of a sudden, it doesn't matter anymore. It's in the delivery. Like everything matters. So I just absolutely am thrilled that you brought that up.
Absolutely.
That's the added spice to our conversation.
Yep. I mean, it's so true. I mean, there's not an experience I've had in a restaurant or any type of dining establishment the world over where poor service consistently, let me rephrase, in every experience, poor service is far
Yes.
more detractive than poor food, right? You can have food that's not great, or maybe it's misordered, or it just isn't. But if you have a server who's going to connect with that guest and be sincere and apologize and make it right, it's so easy to gloss over that. People understand that there's a mistake. Oh, you know what? We ran out of this and I didn't know. I'm so sorry, rather than someone like, we're all out. What do you want? Like it's so true.
Yeah.
But it's just that little bit, right?
Yeah.
And it was always hard early on when I was a young chef to like actually recognize that, yes, sometimes that server on the floor is far more valuable to the business than I am, right? Because no matter how hard I work on the food, if they don't deliver it in a friendly way and enjoy the time that they spend with that guest and help make that an additive experience, then it doesn't matter how much effort I give or my team gives in the kitchen. Like it's just not going to be the same. So we always look at that. Like, the people that we hire are so much more important than the quality of the food. I mean, we still want great quality food, don't get me wrong, but like
of course,
one of the first things is like, when we get to that operational point is like, we've got to have we always want a great training program. And we want to make sure that if we're not involved over the long term, that the operators really understand, and whoever's managing that business for them day to day understands, the ethos that we want to instill in our team, that's delivering those services.
It's wonderful. Yes. And the food story, having them understand what you're doing in the kitchen. And it's really just, we all want the same thing, no matter what we're doing or who we are, whether we're a guest, we're all human beings, and we're all looking for a better experience, more connection. So if it's a good thing or a bad thing that brings us together to connect, it's just the skill of the server understanding, oh, I get to connect more because something went wrong. That's an asset, right?
Yeah.
So I think we're all just, so many barriers are breaking down, and those those breakdowns offer opportunities for us to build quality and connection and everything that we want. So, and we can do it outside.
Yeah.
Right.
One more
It's
thing.
outdoor
This
hospitality.
triggered. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
This triggered another story real
Except
quick
you
about
froze
like
again.
the interact. Oh,
so now you're going to have to say it twice.
Okay. So this just jogged another really fun story. So this is our veggie side story. So we had a project and it was an existing full service operation on a resort, and everybody's anonymous, so their identities can be saved. But they came to us and said, hey, listen, we've got this operation and you know, it's okay, but people aren't really spending as much money as we thought they would. They just they're ordering, they eat a bunch of sides, and you know, we don't feel like it's really doing really well. We want to find some better menu options and so on and so forth. And so we started looking at some of their data on their point of sale system. And we noticed okay, well, people eat a lot of side dishes, but their check average is really low. But we just it pinged in our head one time. Oh, well, these are all vegetable sides that people are ordering. Oh, hey, well, what do your servers say about vegetable options people have? Because there's no vegetarian items on their menu. And well, I don't know. Our staff kind of, we've had trouble with staff and they're not really great. And, they turn over. Maybe once or twice someone said they wanted some vegetarian food, but, it's not a significant demand. And we got in there and we started talking to some of the people that had been there a long time. And oh yeah, people always ask for vegetarian food. There's so many vegetarians and vegans out there. We're oh, well, no wonder they're only ordering side vegetables. That's all you have. You have one salad and a few vegetable sides. So it was one little piece of the chain, right? The break in the chain where they didn't have that trust amongst their staff to provide feedback of what the guests were looking for amongst all the other, challenges of the day, right? We understand there's a lot of things to manage in these properties, not, outside of food and beverage, but, having that trust and that connection with your employees to provide feedback and just recognize, oh, hey, you've got a lot of vegetarians that are showing up. You got people that really want to spend money here, but you don't have the products available to them. We put some vegetarian items on there, grew their salad section a couple items, massaged it, made no other real changes. And, within months, it was significant, it was 25%
Black
increase
and
in their check average. And then they started getting great feedback from customers, right? The customers weren't saying anything because it was just they were we were talking about earlier, it was just a subtractive experience. Well, it's fine. They didn't have any vegetarian things. We were in the middle of nowhere. We didn't expect it. But once you had it for them, people were oh my gosh, we went to this place. It's in the middle of nowhere. And they had vegetarian food for us. It was just a huge difference in the feedback they got. And I mean, that was one of our, we're really excited about that. That was just another solution that we were able to provide. So,
it's so funny, isn't it? It's so simple. It's simple communication. And this is not a plug for what I do, but I can't help just mentioning that one of the things through that we do is we offer kind of a unique feedback opportunity for all kinds of resorts, because it's like you said, they just never thought to really sit down and ask their staff. Well, the staff, it doesn't mean that they couldn't come and tell you, but it doesn't matter enough to them. There's no incentive, right? So when somebody comes, a guest comes, how do we get feedback from them? We send them a survey after they left and after they're back on, okay, school starts tomorrow. Oh my gosh, my head's in a different place. So through Expitality's, we do really unique feedback data gathering, and we'll actually go on site and interview people while they're on site and turn it into an experience that's branded for the business. And it becomes an asset for them. And we get real feedback, legit conversational, what's going on now feedback. And what do you do with that, right? Well, we will tell you and help you with what to do with that. But look what you did with that. And it's only because a simple conversation, but we don't facilitate those. And it's the most value, 25%. That's a big deal.
Huge. That's
so
huge.
it always comes down to communicating and doing what's obvious.
Absolutely. I
You
mean,
know,
it's like it's tying these threads together, right? It was an operator who just said, "Well, we're going to do it, but just do this," and they didn't care enough, and they didn't put enough effort in early on, and they didn't iterate. They just opened the doors
right.
and they put what's on the menu at like all the other spots around the area, right? They put burgers and steaks and chicken and fish, right? And they just let it run, and they didn't,
Yeah.
have great connection to their management. The management didn't have great relations with the staff, and so all these communication lines broke down, and they
Mhm.
just were unsatisfied. Well, no one spends any money here. Well, they want to, but you don't know how to connect with them and understand it. So it's really so many things. And you're right, when we're talking about this, I recognize how we're explaining just the complications in food and beverage, but that's where it's easy for us, right? So we've been doing this
Right.
for 20 plus years,
Right.
and our
Yeah.
team is, like they're all, high quality operators, chefs and service personnel and et cetera. And they love the outdoors, right? We're dispersed across the US in these places where we love to be out in this environment. We love connecting with people and sharing these connections. We love doing this kind of legwork to make connections in these communities that are pretty rural that you wouldn't think have, great food options. And it turns out there's a lot of people there that are excited to do more because these glamping facilities or these experiential facilities are bringing a higher level of customer. And some of these operators are
Yeah.
like, listen, I can't do this food 365 days a year in my community because the residents can't afford to pay for it. But I'll do it for your guests. I'll bring it out there 3 times a week, or I'll do these dinners. Like, they're willing to make that elevation in their operation because they
Of
know they have a
course.
client. And people don't
Yeah. It's
think that way. They
great.
just look at the menu in this town and say, oh, well, everybody in this town eats, fried fish sandwiches, so we'll just put one on our menu. Well, that's only because that's what the local community might be eating or whatever it is. But there's opportunity to elevate the operators in these communities too, if you provide the right,
Exactly.
opportunity for them.
I love that. Yeah, it's the stone soup methodology, right? Like it's wonderful. Okay, so we have filled an hour,
Wow.
and
Wow.
I
Yeah.
know it was so much fun talking with
Yeah.
you. It just you're lovely, and you have such a beautiful vision and service minded and the whole thing. So how would you like to end this? Do you have a, I don't know, an inspiring, everything you've shared is inspiring, but is there any, do you have any final words
Mm.
before we depart for now?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's, like I know that the food and beverage can a lot of times seem very expensive. It can seem very complex, and a lot of it is foreign to most operators in this space. But all I can say is that, it's you don't have to be scared by the challenges. Like, there are people that can help you through those challenges. And I will tell you firsthand that if you do it well and you start small and you're willing to iterate, you're going to find the right connection and the right level of service for your resort, for your customers. A lot of times it does help to have someone like us along to kind of hold your hand, guide you through the forest, so to speak.
Yeah,
But it's an exceptional experience, and we feel like food and beverage really is what's going to distinguish operators going forward. The space is getting more and more crowded every year,
yeah.
and you no longer can rest on the fact that you provide an exceptional accommodation. You need to now provide more amenities, and that goes beyond Egyptian cotton sheets and et cetera. Like, you need to offer people solutions, and I think food and beverage has just such an outsized impact on the investment that you make.
Perfect. How can people reach you? They want to reach out.
Yeah, outboundkitchen.com or John at outboundkitchen.com.
Great. Thank you so much. It was such a
Yeah.
pleasure. It was really fun. And we'll do this again, and we'll talk about culture next time.
Oh, sounds great.
Okay.
I'm excited. That's
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite things. So enjoy
Okay.
your
I'd
beautiful
love
sunny day
to.
out there. I'm gonna go
Yes,
try and get outside
I'll be
myself
here
here.
on Zoom calls all day, but it's beautiful. And
Yeah.
I'm actually at this used to be a farm in Fort Collins. And right
Oh,
behind me, it's called Jessup Farm, and this is a restaurant. And then there's a little coffee shop, and there's a barber shop, and some boutiques, and another restaurant, and a brew house, all in the same old buildings. But they've done some simple things like the garden out back that they'll pluck the mint or whatever the herbs are to cook with, and bring it over and put it in your salad, and little things like that that just connect you to the location and the history of a place. All of those things create everything we were talking about. Like, you can do that on your property. So call John, call me, get outside, everybody, before it snows. Okay.
Absolutely. All right.
All right. Lots